So I've been seeing a lot of people that come out and say, oh, World War II, I know a lot about it. Most people don't really know that much, and there's nothing wrong with that because there's a lot to unpack when it comes to World War II. But I would consider myself very much a history nerd when it comes to World War II. I think if I had to pick a war, that's my go-to, right? Like, here's a fun fact for you. World War II started 3 different times for 3 different continents. Europe, it started in 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. Everyone knows that. It started for America December 7th, 1941 with the attack of Pearl Harbor. But what a lot of people don't know, right, is that Japan, oh boy, Japan, let me tell you. You may think they're cool now with their animes and all this cool stuff they're doing now, but back in the day, they were rough, okay? Let me tell you. Japan started its conquest. That's what we're going to call it. It is indeed a conquest. Japan started in World War II 1931 when it invaded China. So a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people know Japanese, Unit 731. They know about Pearl Harbor and the Pacific Theater and all that stuff. And that's good. It's good to know that stuff if you're going to be a history nerd of World War II. But there's more that you need to know, right? So, one of the things. The Nanking Massacre is not really talked about. Me personally, we didn't learn about it in school. Which, I get it. You don't really want to know about that. That's kind of messed up, if I'm being honest. But Japan committed a lot of atrocities. And I mean a lot of atrocities, right? So, where do we even begin, right? Because a lot of the things that the Japanese military did went unanswered for decades. Like, a lot of the people in the war crimes trial, a lot of them either kind of got a light sentence, the light sentence being they got put to death. Which, in the grand scheme of things, compared to what they put other people through, not a lot, right? If you know about Unit 731, they did a lot of weird and terrible things to people. But a lot of the other ones that didn't make it to trial either killed themselves, died of old age, or just were on the run and no one could ever find them. The Nanking Massacre is probably one of the worst atrocities. I'm not saying it's the worst, because we all know what the number one worst atrocity of World War II is. But it is definitely number 2. So the whole Nanking Massacre takes place, obviously, in, you guessed it, Nanking. The Nanking Massacre took place December 13th, 1937 to February 2nd, 1938, which is not a lot of time. But the amount of people that were killed in that short amount of time is insane. So you have to think, right? Again, the concentration camp and the mass genocide of Jews, terrible. Not saying it's not. But the rape of Nanking was just a couple of weeks. And they killed almost 1 million people in such a short amount of time. They did more than just kill. But we'll get into that. So we'll just start at the beginning, right? So when the Nanking Massacre takes place, Japan had already been invading China, already been kind of doing things, fighting little skirmishes here and there with the Chinese army. Now, keep in mind, the Japanese military at this time is on a real high horse because not too long ago, before this, they beat the Russian Navy. The Russo-Japanese War had ended not too long ago, a couple decades before. And they mollywopped them, right? So it really made Russia look bad, and it made Japan look way, real strong, right? So, December 13th, 1937, Japan steps foot into Nanking. Now, obviously, prior to that, they had been, dropping little bombs, sending notes to the Chinese officials in Nanking saying, hey, if your military doesn't surrender, we will invade, and this will turn real bad. And what does the Chinese military do? They don't surrender. until the very last second, right? So the Chinese officials are like, we're not gonna surrender. Like we need to stand strong and show the Japanese force. That lasted all of maybe 5 minutes, right? Because then the Chinese officials said that, they're like, hey, we're not backing down. And Japan's like, okay, you guys have a couple of days to do this or we're going to invade. And the Chinese officials were like, you guys got this. I'm out. So the Chinese officials dipped. They went to, I think Shanghai or some other city in China at the time, and left the military there and were like, hey, don't surrender. Like, you got this, guys. Figure it out. So once the Chinese officials all left, the Chinese military was like, I'm not about to do this. I'm out. So they tried to surrender, and Japan was like, oh, it's too late. Like, it's too late, bucko. You guys already signed your death warrant, so be ready. So Chinese military does what they thought was the bright idea. Instead of just leaving, they eventually did try to leave, but at the beginning it was, we'll just take our uniforms off and try to hide in with the rest of the civilians. That went about as good as you would expect it to, because the Japanese, instead of going, shucks, the military's gone. I guess that's it. They instead were like, anyone that is of the age range to be in the military that is a male, more than likely they're in the military, so we're going to capture them. So they ended up getting captured. Most of the people that were also captured weren't even in the military. A lot of them were like police, regular civilians, and sometimes they were kidnapping people that were super old, not even like in the age range to be in the military. So when they finally decide, oh, we need to run, that's when Japan just started shooting people. It didn't matter. Men, women, children, didn't matter. They would shoot them. They would kill them. If they didn't shoot and kill them, they would take them. The women, they would rape. It didn't matter the age, and it's very grotesque. I implore you, if you want to learn more about that side of the Nanking Massacre, to do your own research. There is a book that I recommend if you want to learn more about that side of the incident. It's called The Rape of Nanking. It's by Iris Chang. But that book, give it a read. It's honestly, it is a really good book. It gives you different perspectives on the entire massacre of Nanking. If you weren't shot, you were captured. And the unfortunate part of the capturing is Japan tried to say, oh, we got too many people. We got too many prisoners of war. We're not going to be able to feed all of them and our own soldiers. So they just started mass killing all of them. Again, it didn't matter the age, the gender. It was bad. And they would take thousands at a time out into the pastures or wherever, and they would just slaughter them and then put them in mass graves. And they killed so many people in such a short amount of time that the Yangtze River that is in Nanking was red from all the blood of the Chinese men, women, and children that were murdered. And if you weren't easily put out, like by getting shot, a lot of people were killed by being beheaded. There was more grotesque murders, more grotesque ways that they killed people, but I'm not going to get into them because they're bad. Definitely not something that you can read about or hear about on YouTube's. Another big thing that they would do is a lot of the prisoners were used as bayonet practice. A lot of them were strung up on trees by joints, ligaments, sometimes even their tongues. They were hung by the tongue on the tree, and it would rip their tongue out, and then they would be beheaded. They would be used in grenade practice. They would be thrown into cold water and frozen to death, and then their bodies would be used as grenade practice or target practice while they're in the water. later on, after the whole massacre, obviously Japan now ruled over Nanking until the end of the war, and it just got worse. And the poor people of Nanking, after the massacre happened and Japan officially took over, they thought, oh, the atrocities are going to end. It's going to be good now, because obviously the propaganda, they had signs out that were, showing Japanese soldiers, taking care of Chinese kids. And I'm sure that there probably were like a select few that did. But everyone else was terrible, terrible people. And it's no one's fault but the government of Japan at the time, by essentially making them such crazy nationalists that they saw the Chinese people as less than animals. And that's why they didn't feel any remorse about what they did to them. And it's real sad to see, that happens, because I mean, we're all humans, and it's crazy to even read, let alone hear, people, victims and persecutors say, that, oh, they just didn't see us as, they saw us less than animals being hunted. For the Japanese military, it was like squishing a bug, what they were doing to the Chinese people. And it's terrible. It's terrifying. And, unfortunately, it's not been talked about. So, it's good to know that this happened, so that we as a society and as humanity, we never do anything like this again. I mean, for years, keep in mind the Nanking Massacre was in 1937 and to the beginning of 1938. The war wasn't over until 1945. So they had to deal with not only the massacre, but they had to deal with Japanese rule until the end of the war. And after the massacre, it just got worse. I mean, they then started getting the adults hooked on opioids, and the children were getting hooked on heroin, cigarettes, and they just wanted to keep them under their control. And the best way to do that in their mind was to get them addicted to something so dangerous that, and they had the supply for it, so that they would listen to them. That's my short little history lesson on, the Nanking Massacre. I implore you, if you watch this video, if you want to learn more about it, go give the book The Rape of Nanking by Iris Chang a read if you haven't read it before. It will really open your eyes to every perspective of the Nanking Massacre, from the Japanese perspective to the Chinese perspective, and the perspective of the Nanking Safety Zone members, who were German and American, who witnessed all of the accounts that I just explained to you firsthand and tried their best to get their countries to do something about it. I hope you all enjoy. If you do, like, subscribe. If you don't, that's fine. It's not everybody's cup of tea, and I know that. I just wanted to get this video out there because I feel like it's not talked about enough. And if we don't talk about history, we're doomed to repeat it, and I don't want that to happen. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope to make more videos like this in the future. And I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.